Hey, sister, we are ending the Step Up series today with our final episode of this mini series, Rise to the Occasion. The last group of people that we want to talk to who you might have found episodes relevant prior to now, but we really want to talk to our sister friends who are assuming new roles, right? Maybe you're an outgoing officer for a certain position and you are taking on a new position. Maybe this is your first title leadership role that you are taking on. Congratulations. We are so thrilled for you that you are an incoming officer. We know that you have much to consider, much to plan around, and we want to ensure that you feel well prepared as you navigate this somewhat clunky transition that often comes between the day of election and actually assuming your responsibilities in your role. As we mentioned on our last episode, we actually have a resource to support you. Our virtual officer transition workshop is completely pre-recorded and available for you to access and utilize as you transition from one executive team to the next. We are calling it Pass the Gavel because we want to ensure an efficient, strong, empowering transfer of leadership from one position to the next. If you or your leadership team are interested in this, we have a link in the show notes that we would love for you to check out. And of course, you can always contact me if you have interest in an in-person or a live virtual program. So before we get to that day, whether that is in a month from now or next weekend, I'm sure you are thinking, okay, Cass, I have this new title. How do I prepare for my new role? I think before we get there, it's super important to note that you could be in a couple different places right now. You could be thrilled that you were just elected into the role that you have been praying for, dreaming about, hoping for months, or maybe the past couple weeks since you've started considering taking a leadership role. You could also be in another camp where you were elected into a role that was secondary, maybe not as exciting as the one that you really wanted. And you're trying to maintain momentum that you're excited because you're a leader, but it's just not the role that you wanted. You could also be in another camp that you were nominated off the floor. You had no expectations of being a leader. And sister, we're thrilled that you're here. We're so happy that you accepted that nomination and said yes to being placed where your chapter sees you best fit. Regardless of where you find yourself, I think this is a really important time for us to go back to our why. Whether you started the series with us or are just getting caught up now that you've been elected, we started the Step Up series considering the fact that what you want to accomplish in the chapter, I'm going to bet, is bigger than a title. It's bigger than a list of responsibilities that falls under one sole position. It's an impact. It's a changed experience for your members. It is stronger community. It is more focus. It's a greater focus on a certain area of the chapter. You want to accomplish something in your role. And I don't think you can only accomplish that thing in one role. So if you are finding yourself in a different position than the one you expected, or a position altogether that you were not planning on being, you were not planning on being a leader in a titled role this year, and you are finding yourself in that place, it's time for us to go back to our why and consider why we applied, why we accepted a nomination. What about our sorority, our chapter experience makes us want to be a little bit more invested, give of our time, energy, resources to ensure that something grows or is better than how we found it? Take a minute and think back to what that why is. As we talked about last week on Trusting Your Sisters, I want to encourage you again to plug that into whatever role, whatever outcome of elections you find yourself in. Obviously, you are finding yourself in a specific role that might look a little different than where you thought you were going to be. How does this new role change the way you are able to make that impact this year? What other resources do you have access to? Maybe you have a committee, maybe you have a budget, maybe you have the opportunity, the vantage point to be a part of some confidential, more private conversations that help move the needle in certain ways. Keeping those things in mind is super essential before you go into all the logistics of officer transitions, right? Because anybody can learn logistics. I believe that anybody can learn how to do a position. Not everyone can have the heart to do it. So getting your heart and your intentions in the right place is going to set you up super well to be super logistical during officer transitions and assume those responsibilities. The second thing that I think is super important as you prepare to accept the torch, be passed the gavel, is for you to celebrate the sister who has held the role you are assuming for the past term. I think it is so necessary that she hears from you the things that you have seen her do well. You take the time to celebrate her, tell her what you are excited to build on that she has accomplished, or maybe the things that you saw be a challenge or a struggle in her position, and acknowledge that those things are difficult and you are thankful for the example that she set. Accepting or navigating challenges is just as important as being someone who accomplishes things, right? Who gets to see recognition and awards. Being able to recognize both in the leader whose roles and responsibilities you're assuming helps her leave her role feeling so much more thankful and empowered and rewarded for the time and energy that she sacrificed for this position in the past year. This has been a tough year. If you're an outgoing officer as well, you know that it was not easy to move from a completely virtual winter and spring to a completely in-person fall. That's not something that any officer in the history of our sorority experience has ever had to plan for. So giving her some recognition is going to allow her to transition out into being a general member of the chapter, if for one more semester or for maybe another year and a half, allow her transition into her new role confident and with grace and more eager to support you in your endeavors. The last thing that I want to leave you with, and I want you to write this down in your notes app or on your mirror where you'll see it regularly, is this: my title is not my identity. One more time. My title is not my identity. Write that down in your notes. Write that down on your mirror, on a notepad, wherever you'll see it regularly, because this is one of the hardest lessons that I had to learn in my leadership journey as a collegiate officer. I had such a hard time separating who I was as a person, as Cassie, as a student, as a friend, as a sister, from what I did for my chapter. Because I found so much pride and took so much personal initiative in the things that I did as Panhellenic delegate, as chapter president, as vice president of internal affairs, that when I graduated from college, I had a bit of a reality check of, okay, who am I now? Right? I was still working for my sorority. And so the reality check took some time for me to build out of. But to preserve your relationships, to continue building meaningful relationships, and to ride the highs of your position and the lows of your position with a little bit more sense of groundedness and humility, it is essential for you to separate who you are in the chapter from what you do for the chapter. The other thing that separating your identity from your title will do is, when things go well in your position, when you plan an amazing date party, or when you receive an award for work that you've accomplished, it's a win for the chapter, right? Everyone in the chapter is cheering on, as that is a collective win. And the same goes for when you make mistakes, when that contract isn't submitted on time, or there's a massive risk management incident at an event you hosted. The chapter takes that failure together. When you allow yourself to be separate from the things that you do, they no longer affect who you are. And I think that is a lesson that I wish that I had taken more to heart, and would have played such an influential role in the relationships that I was cultivating and building during my collegiate sorority journey. Now, if you're listening to this and you are getting off of a role where you took everything personally, give yourself some grace. It's massively easier said than done, but it's something I wanted to share with you because you don't have to keep up that habit as long as I did. And I think you will see a change as you go into this new position, whether it's your first ever position or your second or third. It will change the way that you navigate it, knowing that the wins that you have are wins of the sorority, of the sisterhood holistically, and failures or mistakes that happen in your position are reflective of the sorority holistically. You are not alone in this process. You have a team of sisters who want to support you and working to build those relationships, both on your executive council, on your leadership team, and also within the chapter in committees, in Titleist leaders' roles. Developing relationships to build out a strong leadership network, regardless of titles, is going to help you feel that sense of sisterhood and community that you crave, that sometimes we miss in leadership when we get so caught up in the status or reputation that comes with the title that we hold. I challenge you to prepare to navigate these challenges with grace, collaboratively with one another, trusting that the chapter is stronger when you are disassociated from your title, still taking ownership for your responsibilities, taking ownership for the things that you have to accomplish, but knowing at the end of the day, your relationships with your sisters matter so much more than the leadership duties you are to accomplish this year. You have purpose, you have value. Your sisters have elected you on purpose for a reason. Hold that pride. Be excited. Don't forget to celebrate the sisters that are around you and buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. And we are so thrilled that we get to support you in this new season of your sorority journey.